Hello friend, welcome back to Acre Homestead. We are heading outside to do some planting, if you can believe it or not. It is fall planting time where we're gonna put some of our transplants, some of them died, some of them are doing okay, into the ground. We're also gonna be direct sowing a bunch of things. Let's see here. This is my summer seed collection, so we're not gonna be planting summer seeds. Here is my container with all of my winter seeds. I've never done this before. I think I'm gonna bring this entire container out. We have broccoli, cauliflower, lettuce, spinach, kale, beets, carrots, radishes, Swiss chard, all sorts of things that can be planted out in the garden right now. We've got quite a bit of harvesting we need to do today as well. So I'm gonna bring out some baskets. I'm gonna put this here. Here are some of my seed saving fun things we've been working on. I'm gonna bring this. What else am I gonna bring? I need a pair of gloves, so I'm gonna bring those as well. And then I want to plant a bunch of my cilantro seed that I had saved from last year. So we're gonna get that in our basket. I need a tool to actually plant or to dig holes in the ground. And then I wanna get some amendments. Where I'm gonna be planting, we just harvested potatoes yesterday. And I need to amend the soil and add some life and nutrients back to the soil. I am so excited for the worms and the the worms that I found in the soil. So my soil is good. So we're gonna grab some amendments. And I need to get some compost, but that is in a different area. So we're gonna take this down to the garden first. And I'm gonna bring some baskets because we need to harvest today. We need tomatoes, we've got green beans, probably, I don't know. We'll figure it out there, but I know we've got a lot of those two things that I just said. Here are the transplants that we can plant out into the garden. We have some cabbages here, and I think this is cauliflower. Yes, this is cauliflower and this is broccoli. I've got them labeled on this side. Some of my veggie starts died when we had some 100-degree weather, but some of them are looking really good. So I'm gonna see if I can carry them in these baskets. This might not fit here. It might. Oh yeah. Awesome. Okay. Let's see if I can carry all three of these baskets down at one time. Perfect. Dare I say it's starting to feel like fall out here. Yesterday it rained for the first time in like 2.5 months, maybe 3 months. It rained all day this morning, and today is the first break in the weather that we can get out there and get these little seedlings and seeds in the ground. Let's go. This is the bed that we had our potatoes in, and we are going to put some fall crops in this bed along with this bed. This is where we had the black beans, but before we can do that, I want to go grab some compost. I'm still deciding what exactly I'm going to do with this bed, but I know what I'm going to do with this bed. Before I can plant in this bed though, I want to amend it with some compost, so let me go grab that real quick. Now it's time to get the compost out of these bags and spread evenly. When I originally planted out this garden, everything looked pretty good going into the garden, but then everything stunted out because I think the soil was lacking a little bit in nutrients. And so when I ripped out the spring crops, the broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage, I amended the beds, if you were with me, with compost and some amendments, some like micronutrients and minerals. And everything that I planted in those amended beds took off instantly. So that's what I'm doing here. A little layer of compost, some micronutrients and mineral amendments, and I can link it down below. for you if you're interested in what I'm using. And I'm hoping that these plants take off just like that second set of planting did. I had some comfrey that I just ripped the leaves off, and I was going to let them compost in place. But because I'm going to be planting seeds, I think I'm going to pick those up and I'll put them in another bed. I'm just going to evenly distribute this compost, kind of a nice little layer over the top. And then I've got a soil amendment that I'm going to add that will help build some minerals, I think, back in the soil. This right here is my pumpkin bed, and I had some zucchinis planted right here, and I ripped those out because they were done for the year. And I don't want weeds growing up through these holes, so I'm going to take this comfrey and stuff it in the holes as weed barrier until I figure out something to do with this. This is the amendment that I'm putting in the bed. That was easy. So I'm gonna just gently kind of evenly distribute this amendment into my bed. I probably don't need to do this, but feels like something I need to do. Now I get to start planting. So this is the first time I'm actually using my Epic Garden trays, and that's really easy. You just stick your finger in the top and they come right out. So this right here is cauliflower, so we're going to start with cauliflower. This is the first time I'm using these Epic Garden cells where I'm getting them from my seed starting room into the garden. And I have to say, I like these way better than my 52 cell trays where I'm dealing with 52 plants when I want to plant them out. I can't just take 6 plants out at a time like this little, box here. I'm dealing with 52, and this is way easier to get them out of the seed starting cell and get them into the garden. And the cool thing about these is they're dishwasher safe. So I can bring these back up and wash them. I do have a discount code for these cells, but you're also going to see me in a minute also use a soil blocker. I like both methods, honestly. This year I was trying all the methods to figure out which way I like the best. And I think it just depends on when I'm starting seeds, how much time I have. When I don't have very much time and I want to get some seeds started instantly, these cells are the way to go because I can just fill them up with soil and I'm ready to start planting seeds. The thing about these is then I have to manage these, bring them back up to the grow room, wash them, all of that. So it's a lot faster up front, but a little bit more work after you plant out. I like soil blocking because once you put the soil block in the ground, then everything is in the ground and the only thing you have to bring up from the garden is the tray. But they're a lot more work up front and there's a learning curve when it comes to making the soil blocks. So I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I think knowing how to do all the ways is best. But the cool thing about this year is I tried a bunch and I'm not married to any of them. I can use whatever tool in the moment that works the best for the job. That down there is cauliflower. Now in this tray, I've got a couple different things. I've got cabbages and I use soil blocks to do these cabbages. So I'm gonna get these planted next. And then for these green onions, I just put soil in a whole tray and sprinkled the onions on top. So we'll get those planted in just a minute. But first I'm gonna get these cabbages in the ground. And I got 6 cabbages. I started a bunch more, but with the weather and being new to this, a bunch of them died. So I'm happy with 6. cauliflower, cabbage are planted. Let's get this broccoli rabe planted. Now this is not a head broccoli. This is a broccoli rabe. So it's like a, I've never grown it before. I've attempted, but it's never done this well. So we're gonna get this in the ground, and I think you're just supposed to get little sprigs that you can harvest off regularly instead of one big massive harvest of, you know, like a big head. These have done beautifully. Actually, it looks like, yeah, so let's get these in the ground next. And then I've absolutely loved my weed fabric for most of my garden, and clearly you can see I'm not putting it down here. I'm going to show you what I'm going to put here instead of the weed barrier as a weed prevention. This is something I listened to when I went to the Homesteaders of America conference. It was a method of weed barrier prevention, and I'm going to try it in this bed. The only thing I'm married to is Josh. I'm not married to any gardening method. I'm not married to any food preservation method. I'm not married to any, oh my goodness, look at the root system on that. That is incredible. The beauty of life is we can learn and adapt and keep learning and figuring out what we find the best. So I probably should have got these in the ground a while ago because the root system is pretty incredible, but they're not root bound. So let's get these in the ground. I think I can plant these a lot closer together than I planted the cabbages. So I'm going to put these probably about every 6 inches apart or so. Pop those out. Oh, it got warm there for a second, but the sun is going behind the clouds again, so that's really nice. It's cooling off a little bit. It's a little humid out here because it's rained for the last 2 days, which we're not used to. Some of these I have 2 plants in one, so I'm going to try to gently separate them. I'm going to try to get all these plants in this half of the bed here. This bed is officially technically planted out, but not in the way that I want it planted out. So what I'm going to do for weed barrier between these plants, I'm going to plant lettuce and cilantro throughout this entire area, and hopefully that will come up, and 1, we'll be able to eat off of it, and 2, it'll outcompete any of the weed seeds that want to invade this bed. So I've got a ton of different varieties of lettuce. The only type of lettuce I have planted yet this year is romaine, and we've been eating on it a ton. So I think I'm going to do a couple different varieties this time. I've got some romaine here, so can't hurt to plant some of that, but I haven't done any of these like leafy style lettuces. So let's get some of those. I don't like anything that has red on it, not because I don't like the flavor, but I've noticed that this is a freckled romaine or a red curly lettuce. I've noticed that when I bring those inside and wash them and put them in my fridge, those go bad the quickest. The way I like to harvest lettuce is harvest probably a week or a week and a half or so's worth, get it all washed up, get it in the fridge so that it's ready to go, and I'm not having to wash it all the time when I want to use it every day. I don't tend to come down to the garden if I want a salad. It's just like fast food. I make it fast food, so I gravitate towards it. So I want it to stay fresh in the refrigerator for at least a week. I can easily get romaine and green lettuces to last for a week in the fridge, no problem, as long as they don't have any red on them. I don't know why, that's just my own experience, anecdotally, what works for me. So I've got a couple different varieties here, and I'm going to probably do half of this area with the cauliflower with lettuce, and then we're going to do some cilantro, and then I'll figure out, maybe we'll do something different for where the broccoli is. I'm going to make little trenches kind of in between. Oh, there's some potato stuff. I'm gonna sprinkle. I'm going to go back and sprinkle the soil over the top. These are some pelleted seeds I didn't realize I had. I'm going to go ahead and plant this whole package because I think I've had these for 2 years and I don't know how good they're going to be. Pelleted seeds usually you don't want to keep longer than a year, so I'm just going to heavily plant these between. The next thing I'm going to plant in between all of these broccoli and cabbages is my cilantro seed. Got a whole bag here. This is stuff that I grew last year's garden and saved the seed. I'm going to plant this pretty heavily because I don't know how well this is going to grow. I'm going to try to save seed again this year. So if this works well, then I'm going to be pretty excited about it. All right, that was a lot of fun. That was really easy. Now a little bit more of a tedious task is going to be plant these onions. And I think what I'm going to do for these onions, I've been thinking about this. These are green onions that technically they said they needed 155 days, I think, to mature. I'm just totally experimenting. I think I'm going to put one onion in each one of these holes where I had the black beans. This might be a silly idea, might be a brilliant idea. Time will tell. So you can see where the holes are. I just let some of these leaves stay on here. And I left the plant stem in the hole. So it's going to take a little bit of effort for me to move some soil to plant the onion. Here's one weed. I really had very, very few weeds because of this fabric. There's pros and cons to this fabric. One of them was, one of the pro was weed prevention. So I'm just going to take some time to put this little onion in this hole. And just like that. So these are supposed to be green onions, so they're not supposed to get very big. I've never done a fall planting of green onions before, so we'll see how it goes.
I've gotten a lot of questions about the weed barrier and whether I like it or not, and I absolutely love it. But just like the soil blocks versus starting seeds in trays, I think that there's benefits to not using it and there's benefits to using it. The one thing about when you use it is it's a lot more work up front because you have to lay it out, you have to burn the holes, and the one other downside is you can't have as much freedom in the garden to play around because you only have the holes that are in the fabric. Versus the bed that I just planted, I just planted to my heart's content. There was no rhyme or reason. And there's no work up front other than amending the bed. And at the end of the season, I'm going to have to manage this fabric. But I have to say, I have loved it in the beds that it's in, where you plant the crop and you let it go, like where the peppers and onions are and the tomatoes. I didn't have it where the onions are, but where the peppers are and the squash. It is amazing because the weed pressure is so much less than where I didn't have it. So I will be definitely using it moving forward, but in some cases I won't, like that one bed we just planted out.
That was a little tedious, but we got it done. So from here over, each one of the holes has a green onion, plus along the back side I put green onions. Probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have put spinach or something along the back side, or more snow peas or something, but I didn't. I just put the green onions. So now we're going to switch gears just a little bit. I do want to plant a few more seeds in the ground. We need to get this watered in. But before we do that, I want to harvest all the ripe tomatoes out of this bed. And then we've got a ton of green beans right there we need to harvest, plus along the back side of the entire garden, all those big trellises back there, there's a ton of tomatoes that need to be harvested as well. Some of these are not good, so these are going to go in a pile here, and then I need to come back with a big bucket and give those to the chickens. They will thoroughly enjoy those tomatoes. Anything we can't eat, the girls will thoroughly enjoy. I think I'm going to pick just anything that has any sort of color on it at all. Like these two tomatoes, they've already started to blush. Tomatoes ripen from the inside out, and they will continue to ripen inside. So this is going to take me a minute. I have 11 plants in this one bed, and I have probably already harvested 100 pounds of tomatoes out of this bed. It's been an incredible tomato year this year. So let's just get to work and get to picking. I'm gonna come harvest on one side of the bed, and then I'll go on the other side of the bed. These are all wet because they got rained on. So when I go inside, I will put them on a tablecloth to dry out so that they dry out really well. You know what I haven't made yet this year? I haven't made tomato soup. And there is nothing better. I can leave my recipe for my tomato soup down below. Then, especially this time of year when you can just, it's getting warm out here now, but when you can just start to feel the season change, but the tomatoes are still coming in. So good.
A new canning project that we end up doing together after I harvested all these tomatoes is we make tomato soup to can, and it turned out so good. I can't believe I had never tried that before, and so I'm really excited to share with you how I made tomato soup and canned it. We pressure canned it. Now, Josh and I like a tomato bisque, which is just, it has cream in it. So the only thing I didn't add to the tomato soup that I canned was the cream. So when I open the jar, I will just put some cream in it and make grilled cheese, and that is one of Josh and I's favorite dinners. But I don't make it that much because Josh and I both really like soup for dinner, but neither him or I really like soup leftovers for lunch. And so this is the first year that I've thought, oh my goodness, I could can soup in smaller quantities instead of making a big pot of soup and then, you know, kind of not really wanting to eat the leftovers, so that on a night where, you know, I need something fast, I can just open a jar of soup. We can have that for dinner. We don't have any leftovers and call it good. So it ends up turning out so good, and I'm really excited to share that with you. So stay tuned for that. And these Roma tomato plants have just exceeded my expectations. They have done phenomenal.
That is my 5th basket that size, I think, from these 10 Roma tomato plants. I have 11 plants in here total, but 10 of them are Roma tomatoes. That seed packet was a $2 seed packet I got from M.I. Gardener. There was probably 25 seeds in it, and I have definitely grown a lot of tomatoes. This is probably, I'm just gonna pick it up, and I mean, that's at least, I'm trying to think, like that's got to be 40 pounds. That's definitely heavier than a 25-pound bag of sugar or something. So incredible. I can link M.I. Gardener down below. I do have a discount code for him, for his seed company. if you want to get yourself some seeds. Right now is a good time to start thinking about next year's garden. So now we're going to come right over here and we're going to start harvesting some of these Blue Lake bush beans here. I planted these as a second succession of green beans, and they are doing better than my first succession. They are Blue Lake bush beans, and they're super beautiful and tender. These in here, these are coriander. I'm going to harvest these for the seed. You can see some of them are already starting to form seeds right here. The flower is the white part, and then they turn green, and that's where the seeds are. But I have a ton of Blue Lake green beans in here that are ready to be harvested. So that's what I'm going to take a second to do. I've already harvested twice off of these plants. Again, I should have put my root apron on. I did not this morning. So I'm just going to start putting them in my apron here. The coriander smells incredible. These plants are loaded. I haven't looked at them in 3 days, and oh my goodness, they're like falling over with the weight of the green beans. I need to go grab a basket. Let me go grab a basket. I'll be right back, and we'll get the rest of these. And I'm going to show you over here how many there are. Walking back to the green beans, these 2 onions caught my eye. They're about to flower. So I'm going to harvest these for dinner tonight. Pretty decent size. You see all those green beans in there? They're just falling over from the weight of them. So this is a pretty small section right here. It's probably 2.5 feet by 4 feet. And you can grow a tremendous amount of food in a small space. It is incredible. We may live on a pretty good sized piece of property, and my garden is big, but you can grow a lot. You can grow a lot in a small spot. I mean, I've probably already gotten, I don't know, 8 dinners worth of green beans for Josh and I out of this one little bed here. And I had something planted here before this. I had cauliflower and broccoli and cabbage planted here. So this is not the first thing that's come out of this section of the garden this year. Worried I'm going to break the plants. They're so weighted down.
This is the bed I was talking about earlier that we amended the soil. So the plants, once I planted them and they started growing, I have not fertilized them at all. And look how beautiful and green they are. I think it's because I did the work up front with giving these plants a good amount of nutrients so that they had that while they were growing. So I'm loving this.
There's a couple things I wanted to show you that I did not even know that this was out here, and this is the idea, kind of what I wanted to show you. You all know that my pepper plants were a little bit stunted when I put them out here because I put them out when it was still a little too cold. But what I did is I went and I picked all the peppers, even though they were really small, hoping that what would happen is my peppers would start putting on more flowers and producing, there's a mini pepper right there, producing more peppers. And look at this. So I'm getting a ton of peppers back on my plants from doing that first initial hard harvest. Those are just some of them. Over here, it's starting to happen as well too. They might be little, but I'm starting to get more peppers on these plants. And I'm totally happy with that. They're all flowering like crazy. The black beans here are starting to grow up the trellis. I have some tomato plants in here that are getting disease and I should just rip them out. I've gotten a lot of tomatoes off them. And I have a bunch more tomato plants that are just fine. This is that first pepper bed we were in, and lots of, I mean, even this plant, these plants look the best they've looked all year long. So I'm hoping that we still have enough time that that second round of peppers will produce quite a bit for me. Here again, these tomato plants are just kind of diseased, so I should just pull off all the tomatoes today. And you can see again, these are some jalapenos, and there's a ton of jalapenos, a ton of flowers, a ton of peppers starting to grow on these plants. And then these tomato plants here, those ones there, and the tomato plants all the way down the rest of this garden all look beautiful and need to be harvested. I'm hoping that I don't have too many split. See, that split. I was worried about this because of the 2 days of rain. That split. So some of these just need to be brought right inside, washed, and put into the freezer, because we can't really keep these on the counter or they'll go bad. And if I leave them out on the vines, they'll go bad. But again, these peppers plants are starting to produce more, so I'm going to grab these. I don't think we're supposed to get any more rain, but it wasn't supposed to rain today, and it rained. So I'm going to pull all these tomatoes, especially if I see any cracking. And these are going to go, they're going to get washed, cored, directly into, yep, all these have cracked, directly into the freezer, because they are not going to be good for anything fresh eating. This is a reason why a lot of you all in the South, a lot of gardeners talk about harvesting all your tomatoes when they're just starting to blush. Because in the South, from what I understand, I mean, this one hasn't cracked, so I can let this one ripen on the counter. From what I understand, you all get a lot of rain in this time of year. We don't. And so we can generally let our tomatoes vine ripen without the fear of cracking. I almost there's a big crack. There's a big crack on that. I almost came out after harvesting all those potatoes. No crack on this one, so I'll bring this one in and let this finish ripening inside. No crack on this one. I'll let this one ripen inside. But we don't have that fear generally, and I knew that this was a possibility, this was going to happen. So last night after I harvested I'm going to put the ones that can ripen on the counter here, the ones that don't have cracks. That one has a crack. And harvested them so they wouldn't have cracks. I just didn't have the time or energy to do that. So we're getting into them today. I'll core them, and they're not going to go to waste. Crack. Ooh, no crack. No crack on that one either.
So the reason tomatoes crack is because once a tomato has reached its full size on the vine, then all it's doing is ripening on the vine. And if a tomato gets a big flush of water and it's not used to that amount of water that quickly, the tomato is going to swell, but the skin isn't going to be able to swell, and so they crack. And so if you live somewhere where you get a lot of rain or a lot of inconsistent rain, this happens a lot. And you can harvest tomatoes as soon as you see any color on them, they are going to ripen inside. So a lot of people will harvest all their tomatoes when they start to see color. I don't have the fear necessarily of this happening all the time. I knew that this was going to be an issue when I went out here today, and I accepted the fact that as soon as I picked these tomatoes with these cracks, I was going to core them and throw them in the freezer. Because they're not bad yet, but they will go bad very quickly if I don't manage them today, because they just cracked, because it's just been raining for the last 2 days. So if you want to ripen your tomatoes inside, then you reduce the risk of this cracking.
Caught this out of the corner of my eye. Zucchini. I'm going to be doing a drop off with some friends, and there's a cucumber here to drop off some of this produce that is abundant, that I have enough to share. Looking for more cucumbers. I've got cucumbers growing down this. Oh, there's one down here. I gotta straighten these plants. This is totally unconventional, but I've been growing cucumbers down my raised bed instead of up my raised bed, and it's been working really well. I've got quite a few to harvest here right now, and there's a lot more flowers, but I want to not have them growing all together. I want them growing in a single file line. So I'm going to organize them real quick. I should have brought my other apron out. Remind me, friend, next time I come out here, say, wear your apron. If I'm not wearing it, yell at me. Every time I come out here, I think, oh, there's just, some stuff. I knew there was going to be a lot of tomatoes, but all this other stuff that I'm grabbing, I did not realize there were so many. And I have this feeling every single time I come out here. It's amazing. I think I'm going to come out this evening and harvest more basil so I can empty my freeze dryer and get it loaded back up. That freeze dryer has been running basically all summer long so far. I was just out here yesterday. Oh man. My dad and I were out here yesterday harvesting those potatoes, and this is the other potato bed we did not get to. One, it took us longer to harvest the potatoes than we thought, and two, it was pouring down rain yesterday, so not ideal conditions to be harvesting potatoes. I've got all my veggies here, but you know what, honestly that's okay, because I had planted these sunflowers. I don't remember the variety of these. I thought they were Sunflower Steve sunflowers, but they're not. They're a dark indigo flower. I don't know if that's the right name or color, but all these tall things coming out of this bed are sunflowers, and I was kind of sad that we were going to rip all of these out before they had a chance to bloom. And my tomato plants, my potato plants haven't died back fully in this bed anyway, so it ended up being kind of a happy accident that we weren't able to get to it, because now you and I will be able to enjoy the full beauty when this bed blooms and is in full. There's just a peak, and it's starting to feel like fall. I mean, it's warm out here now, but it'll be nice to see these beautiful fall colors with these salmon zinnias next to it. I think that's just gonna be beautiful. And you see over there, my cosmos are those white flowers back there, and then all those sunflowers in the back. So I definitely planted sunflowers in 3 different successions. So I've been able to enjoy sunflowers for a long time. I was gonna see if I can show you over there. They're over there, but those ones are already starting to die. So it's been kind of fun. So I'm gonna put this down, and then we're gonna get those seeds that we planted watered in. I also want to show you this. So this was a second succession of zinnias we planted, and I planted them really densely, and they're starting to come up so beautiful with the carrots. My friend and her kids were over the other day, and they were going grocery shopping in my garden. It was kind of fun. She's got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we were harvesting some carrots out of the carrot and onion patch. The first carrots I pulled up, well, actually the second time I've checked, and they were decent size. We actually ate them for lunch, so that's exciting. We're not going to harvest the carrots today, but the onions are starting to bulb up. The carrots are starting to grow. Obviously, we got a lot of tomatoes and zucchini. It's the year of the zucchini. I'm not planting this many plants next year. It's been fun to be able to bless people with the harvest, but it feels like an overwhelming amount to try to find people to donate these zucchinis to. So I'm probably not going to plant quite as many, but it's been a good year so far. So let's go get the those seeds watered in. Friend, I just caught these onions out of the corner of my eye. I'm snacking on a cucumber. These are the onions where I had amended the bed with the carrots. I put compost here. Look at the size of these. These are by far my biggest onions. And so I think that fertilizer that I put and the compost. Okay, here's a perfect example. I fertilized and compost right here. I did not right here because I already had stuff planted. Look at the size difference. Okay, that right there is a huge learning moment because all of these are super small compared to those ones. Okay, huge learning moment there. That is really encouraging. Oh, I see something. It's no big deal, but this is one of the larger onions. It's starting to flower. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick that. Oh, but that's a small one. That's probably because it didn't get quite as much because it was next to here. So that is good to know because that granulated fertilizer I planted really seemed to help because all these beds, you know, I was so worried about them at the beginning of the garden season. If you were with me at the beginning of the garden season, I was worried about them because they came up looking, I didn't even show them because they were so bad and stunted and embarrassing. And the same with my black beans. When they first came up, they looked stunted and bad and embarrassing. But I gave them liquid fertilizer like you all had recommended, and they look really good now, and they're starting to grow, these black beans and the other black beans we already harvested. But I would rather them just have a really good start from the beginning, like the Blue Lake bush beans where I put that granular fertilizer down first. Let's get this in the basket. Let's get our seeds watered in. I want to clean up my mess and get all of this stuff put away. So it doesn't get watered, and I keep this area nice and clean and tidy and organized. When I was coming back up with this last basket, I realized there was one bed I didn't harvest from when we were out there. Most of these tomatoes are split, so these need to be washed right now, cored, and into the freezer because I do not have time to process them right now. So here's all the goodies we got today. There's the green beans in the bottom of here, peppers and tomatillos. Whew. It's a lot. So you can see here, this is a good example of cracking. They just need to be dealt with, and I can do that. I'm gonna the Roma tomatoes didn't crack at all, which is amazing. So that's something good to note. So I'm gonna lay these out, let them finish ripening. As they ripen, I'll throw these in the freezer. I'm probably gonna call a few of my family members and ask them if any of them wanna do some canning projects because I think I grew more than enough for Josh and I, plus some. Whew. We got all of the gardening equipment out of the garden, plus all the veggies. Let me tell you, this fertilizer stinks. I'm gonna put this away. I'm gonna take a second to put all my garden stuff away, and then I'm gonna head inside. I found another tomato. And manage the tomatoes. Put all this stuff away first though. I kind of liked bringing my whole entire seed tote out there, because then when I was done with the seeds, I could just stick them right back in. Now I can get these put away. Here are all my, I saved some, what are these called? Cosmos seeds. Here are the white zucchini seeds I saved. I'm excited to see if these grow. It's a cilantro. And I can run these through my dishwasher. I don't think I'm gonna do that today. I'm just gonna stick them right up here. That'll be a tomorrow me problem. I'm not starting any more seeds indoors at all for the rest of the year. Let me get this put away. Anything that's gonna go out into the garden is gonna be direct sowed. If it's going to be planted. I did not get to planting any spinach, which means I have not grown any spinach this year in the garden. I haven't planted any more radishes. I have right here the other day. I pulled a bunch of my radishes that had bolted, and I'm letting the seed pods dry. I think when these dry, I'll open them up and probably go outside and plant some more radishes. But the radishes in my green stalk are starting to grow really well. I've actually harvested a few of them, so they're working really well in there. So everything that I'm putting into the ground is not going to be like a big harvest and preservation thing that's going to need to be done, I don't think. Well, I say that, but I'm really hoping the cilantro does well so that I could harvest it and freeze dry more of it, because the freeze dried cilantro that I've done already is top notch and I would love to be able to get more of that into my pantry if possible. But the rest of the stuff that I'm putting in the ground is more just going to be like, I want some broccoli, I think, for dinner. So I'm going to run out and grab some broccoli or lettuce or whatever it might be. So I've got my work cut out for me. I need to go inside and manage these tomatoes. The cool thing about when you have a bumper crop of something, like tomatoes this year for me and zucchini are probably my two biggest bumper crops, is in case next year is not a bumper crop, like last year was not a bumper crop of zucchini, hopefully I can preserve enough of it that if I don't, get a bumper crop, then I'll be able to enjoy this year's efforts next year. So friend, thank you for being here. I can pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy it between now and my next upload. I'm grateful you take time out of your day to spend time with me, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.